The RAID is right. All right, so the way that this works is this was a game that we tooled around, John, because we came up with storage trivia last time, and he told us all our answers were wrong. So these are all totally open-ended, and I'm relying on the three of you guys to kind of come up with your own consensus answers. Our IT pros in the audience have been asked the same question, so we're going to compare your answers to what they say. So our scenario number one, and again, feel free to qualify, make assumptions, or whatever you want to kind of
decisions. I don't have a goat or small animal to sacrifice.
The first question is, it's an enterprise deployment. You've got unlimited budget and plenty of storage capacity, but right performance is crucial. What are your thoughts on that? This is basically the blank check question. If I could start anywhere and my CTO has blessed me with anything that I've wanted, what do you guys recommend?
So we're going to start with the assumption that this is vSAN, because otherwise stuff gets weird when you start comparing different alternative, schemas.
Definitely.
If it's heavy sustained write throughput to where you could potentially actually be saturating that multi-terabyte of write buffer, you have one of the biggest, baddest write throughput workloads on the planet. I'm probably going to dial it for failure to tolerate a 1 and RAID 1 type protection, and then I might even stripe it wide.
You'll have multiple disks per disk group, storage capacity disk per disk group, so that you can stripe wide per node, and you'll have multiple disk groups per node.
Yep.
And to go even farther with that, I would say I would look at specifically what's pulling. There's no such thing as a workload where every aspect of that workload is pulling maximum IOPS. You have an operating system somewhere in there.
Yeah, Windows will break at a certain point.
Frankly, it's throttled because it's an operating system nature of the beast. So if we're talking databases, I might look. If we're talking, for example, SQL, I might look and say, transaction logs are getting hammered because it's a torrent of unending I/O. New storage, such as vSAN, allows me to say, take that transaction logs virtual disk, run that as a RAID 1, no question. And because this whole cluster is running high-end database application that doesn't compress dedupe very well, maybe I won't have that or will have that, but make it very specific.
Chelsea, do you have the answers for what our audience said?
I do, and believe it or not, but RAID 10 had the overwhelming majority with 65.4% of Spice heads that are tuning in today.
And
voting for
technically,
RAID
with the
10.
vSAN configuration we were describing, that would be about equivalent to RAID 10.
All right, we are all in agreement. Good job, everybody. Our next scenario, so this one's a little bit different. We're a little bit more constrained. We don't have the blank check. We've got 8 1-terabyte drives, but we need 6 terabytes of usable capacity. We are fairly confident we're not going to have more than 2 drive failures.
Why are you confident about that? Is my first question.
So to actually break down that last statement that Marcus just pointed out, why are you confident on that? Here's the thing. When you look at the maths based on, if you're going to have 3 drive failures, that probably means you've encountered an environmental breakdown. You've got a cooling problem. You've got dirty power. You've reached my classic fire, flood, or blood has happened in the data center. And so at that point, you really need to be focused on your BCDR at that point. Yeah. Like having 8 copies of data locally doesn't really make sense when there's a water main right above that spatial array. So in this case, this one's basically saying if you have this resource. Ron and I always say, let's look at pricing. Let's try to find a way. Maybe dedupe compression. We can make things happen and do that. Obviously, RAID 6 is, I think, is going to be the general consensus here, assuming no dedupe compression, assuming, we're accepting these tolerances, but
I mean,
I always challenge the
if you can predict the future and say that no more than 2 drives are going to die at any one time during a rebuild window, whatever, let's just go with RAID 5 then, but
And
do I need to break out the whiteboard markers to show you the math?
With vSAN, for example, if I take on erasure coding like a RAID 6 setup, and I have that deduping compression going, I end up to a point where I'm buying less raw disk than I get in usable. So it is practical to say I'm only going to take on the amount of disk that, roughly speaking, I actually want for usable, but I still want the redundancy built in. The RAID 6 math stays the same, even if you're doing it with objects instead of disks. So it's at 150%. If you consider something like, say, a very conservative 2x dedupe, all of a sudden I need less disk than I'm getting. So sure, RAID 6, I can go with that.
Okay, RAID 6, possibly RAID 5. So
we can predict the future.
If we can predict the future. Chelsea, what were our Spice Heads' response?
All right, well, you guys are certainly aligned with what your fellow Spice Heads were thinking. 50% of viewers voted for RAID 6.
What was the number 2? Do we have the number 2 answer?
Number 2 had 18.5%, and that was RAID 5.
Okay, all right. It's about what we thought.
Some
2 to 1.
diehards on RAID 5, man.
And our final scenario for today is, again, we're going to go even smaller. So now we've got a home lab. We've got 146 gigabyte drives. We need some failure protection, but we're working on an extremely limited budget.
So I'm gonna
Use ZFS.
So the cult of ZFS strikes again.
I believe that was one of our options we offered.
I'm gonna go other, just because those 146 drives, those are gonna be probably 15,000 RPM drives based on that sizing.
Oh yeah. Also,
so
another
those things
thing
are gonna
is-
suck power, and so you actually just go buy a pair of 1 terabyte cheap SSDs, and or at that point buy a new drive, because actually the power budget for your home lab. I run a home lab, like I've got 7 hosts at home. The power budget for running those 15,000 RPM drives suck a lot of power. And if you're running that many of them, you're gonna start heating your lab. You're gonna start heating your room, and you're gonna feel it in your.
You won't have to pay your heating bill
Yeah,
during the winter,
save money
but
on
Yeah.
that.
I used to use my Xbox
Those of us
to
in the
do that.
South, in the North, by all means, run them, run RAID 0, run more of them or something, or RAID 5.
And this even happens in production where you reach a point that I have a very limited budget, I need to achieve this. Replacing what you have is not necessarily the wrong decision. Because you reach a tipping point, it's that whole sunk cost fallacy, right? Don't throw good money after bad. Just because you say, I have this to work with and I need redundancy, but also to keep within budget, sometimes the only way you're going to do that is to transform and change what you're working with.
And to take this home lab concept a step further, I don't have RAID on my local laptop at home. I just back my stuff up to my NAS.
That's what I was gonna
So
say.
just have backups. Actually, don't even.
just
we're
go
going other.
straight
We're going
JBOD,
other on
RAID
this one.
0, whatever.
Yeah,
Other.
we're going other.
No RAID, basically.
I do a FTT equals 0. I do a lot of no protection on a lot of stuff in my home lab, because if it blows up, I'll just rebuild it. It's not that big of a deal.
You agree with that, Marcus?
Yeah, home lab, JBOD, RAID 0, CFS, whatever, other, yeah.
Okay, all right. And Chelsea, what did our spice head say?
Well, you guys didn't get the last choice, the last answer here. RAID 60 had 1.2%. You guys got other, and that was 2.5% of viewers.
Okay, what was the top choice?
The top choice, I'm getting to it, Justin. I got to
Okay,
build
sorry.
up the
I just wanna
excitement
know.
here. RAID 5 was the top choice with 50.6% of
Any idea why they chose that?
They probably live in the north, and so they're where it's cold.